Intelligence in general is defined as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. In other words, the potential to learn. For a long time, we had a narrow view of intelligence. We didn't appreciate the broad spectrum of human intelligences. But now we have a much more open and appreciative perspective of the variations of intelligence that people express. And that's largely thanks to Harvard psychologist Howard Gardner, who proposed the theory of multiple intelligences. Originally, when he proposed that theory, there were only 7, and now we're up to 9, and most likely we'll be adding more to it. The idea is that we all possess all 9 of these intelligences, but at varying degrees. And typically a person will have a high degree of a couple of the intelligences. If we focus particularly on linguistic intelligence, basically what we mean is that a person is a natural with language. Howard Gardner describes linguistic intelligence as mastering language. He wrote, "We see with clarity the core operations of language, a sensitivity to the meaning of words, a sensitivity to the order of words, a sensitivity to the sounds, rhythms, and inflections of words, a sensitivity to the different functions of language, its ability to convince, excite, stimulate, convey information, or simply to please." To really highlight here how many times he used the word sensitivity. Being intelligent does relate to what you're capable of doing, and it also relates to what you are especially perceptive of. A great example of what we mean by a sensitivity to language is the dialect coach Eric Singer. He has great videos online where he analyzes actors trying to pull off non-native accents.
I'd only just handed them the final scene when the bellhop told me I had a phone call.
This is just amazing in every way. His particular vocal quality and mannerisms are just like Capote's.
But I don't think creative writing can be taught.
You'll notice the way that he tunes into a level of detail that is far beyond most people's radars.
A thing that she doesn't quite get is the oral posture. Her mouth is very open. Again, maybe theater training. The more you open your mouth, the more sound comes out. Have a look at Johanna Hoffman's jaw.
All software developers.
It's a much closer jaw. It's much higher, less space between the teeth. Look at Kate Winslet's.
But what you make isn't supposed to be the best part of you?
Much more open.
Granted, he's been trained, but it's also natural to him, you can tell. So, sensitivity to language. One of the ways in which you can think about the multiple intelligences theory that I think people don't often think about is the way in which intelligences combine with each other and the type of genius that combinations of intelligences can produce. For example, if a person has a high level of linguistic intelligence and a very high level of interpersonal intelligence, being kind of people smart, they're going to be very effective communicators because they can read people well and use language effectively. So they'll be the type of people who can be very persuasive and convincing. If you get someone who has a very high level of linguistic intelligence and musical intelligence, well, you've got a songwriter, or what to me is the epitome of the combination of linguistic and musical intelligence is a rapper. Think about this. A rapper needs both of these types of intelligence. And we're talking real lyricists here, not just the people who I do appreciate who make club bangers. Mumble rap is an art in its own right, but it's not exactly an epitome of linguistic intelligence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But other rappers, for example, Busta Rhymes, Eminem, Tupac, Nas, Joyner Lucas, Lil Dicky, the true lyricists epitomize the combination of linguistic and musical intelligence because they really need both to perform the art that they perform. A rapper who's got linguistic but no musical intelligence really can't be a rapper. They can be a writer, but not necessarily a rapper. Someone with musical intelligence, but not linguistic intelligence, maybe they'll be an instrumentalist or a singer, but not necessarily a rapper, because a rapper needs this combination of a high level of each of these two types of intelligences to combine with each other. And that is essentially the ingredients necessary for the recipe of the rap genius. Just check this out.
Human innovative and I made a rebel, so that anything you say is singing off of me and it'll Damn!
Dizzying lyrics, rhyming, originality, the creativity, the substance, the way they enunciate, the speed with which they rap. It's amazing. It's awe-inspiring, and it is a prime example of linguistic intelligence on display. There's always the big question of how can I become more intelligent in each of the different ways people can be intelligent. And with linguistic intelligence, there are many ways, but perhaps none better than reading. Reading is like downloading words into your mind, and so is listening to people speak as well. But reading is special because writers are so careful with how they express words, and they arrange them very intentionally, often in ways that it's difficult to do when you're speaking spontaneously. And you get the effect of seeing the word and kind of thinking it as you read it, and it gets stored. It's very interesting to observe yourself when you're expressing yourself in language, talking or writing. You'll notice that there's definitely a spontaneous element to it. In a way, you never know exactly what words will come to convey the meaning that you're trying to convey. You kind of feel the meaning, you have a sense of what you want to say, but the words with which you say it arise spontaneously, like little soldiers ready to be deployed, and you just deploy them. You use the word that feels right to express what you want to express. And the more you read, the more you take in words, the bigger the pool becomes of words that might arise. I hope this motivates you to further enhance your linguistic intelligence, to notice it more clearly in the world, and to appreciate this intelligence in yourself and in others. An 8-year-old once painted a picture that eventually sold for almost $1 million. Around the age of 4, Akiane Kramarik began experiencing visions, which she couldn't put into words, so she started drawing them. Her parents noticed right away that she was highly gifted, so they provided her with all the material she needed and allowed her to focus on this completely. By the time she was 5, her sketches looked like an adult artist. By the time she was 6, she started painting. By the time she was 7, her paintings were amazing. At the age of 8, she painted her famous Prince of Peace, which was an image that had come to her in a vision. By the time Akiane was 9, Oprah Winfrey caught wind of her.
Our next guest is already earning $25,000 for her work, and she's only 9.
And Oprah did what Oprah does. She lifted her up for the whole world to see, exalting her to fame. The world witnessed Akiane and her work and realized together and in an instant that we were in the presence of genius. In the multiple intelligences theory, there's a set of criteria that each intelligence has to meet to be considered an intelligence, one of which is that there must be examples of geniuses, of people who exhibit this intelligence to an extreme degree. Akiane Kramarik is a genius of visual intelligence. Howard Gardner, the pioneer of this theory of multiple intelligences, described this intelligence as a special cognitive mechanism defined by the capacities to perceive the external and internal visual world vividly, to perform modifications on the initial perception, and to recreate aspects of one's visual experience. And so a quick note on the term visual intelligence: it's often used interchangeably with spatial intelligence, and Howard Gardner preferred spatial intelligence because it didn't leave out blind people And he argued that blind people can be visually intelligent in the same way that a deaf person can be musically intelligent. So we can use the words interchangeably, but visual intelligence is nice and accurate because it's referring to the way in which a person can process visual information that is coming in the form of images. We're talking about the world of light, all visual input, colors. The poet John O'Donohue said, are the language of light and adorn the earth with beauty. Put simply, visually intelligent people know what looks good. They speak the language of light. It also applies not only to the external world of light, but the inner world of visions and images and memories and literally anything you can experience internally that manifests in the form of an image.
Visions of paintings, the Prince of Peace and the Father Forgiven, and many, many others. All those are visions. I forget them. The way I can remember them is to write them or to paint them.
So what exactly do we mean by genius? Geniuses possess this trifecta where they have exceptional ability, exceptional passion, and exceptional work ethic. Exceptional meaning for each of those three areas. They are in the top percentile. And let's remember that, as Albert Einstein said, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And it's not just a make you feel better type of affirmation to say that you really are a genius. It's true that when an individual finds what they're good at, and then they have the opportunity to develop what they're good at, like a fish that finds water, they will thrive. Visual intelligence can manifest as the person who enjoys and is skillful at doing puzzles, or is really good at playing chess, a tattoo artist, a fashion designer, or a designer of any kind. The type of person who plays with that language of light and recognizes which colors complement each other. Photographers are great examples of visually intelligent people. They recognize those moments that are worth capturing, those moments that are especially beautiful or compelling. Another example of a genius of visual intelligence is Stephen Wiltshire, who is an autistic savant who became famous for his ability to draw entire cityscapes from memory after seeing them once, and the details are always accurate. In 2001, Stephen took a helicopter ride over London and subsequently completed a detailed and perfectly scaled illustration of a 4 square mile area. His drawing included 12 landmarks and 200 other structures, and every detail was precise. So Akiane Kramarik and Stephen Wiltshire are both geniuses at visual intelligence. But when you hold their work up next to each other, it doesn't even look all that similar to each other. When we see differences between people who possess the same intelligence, part of the reason for that is the fact that there are many different aspects that can be more pronounced in the way that a person expresses that intelligence. But also, it relates to what other intelligence the person possesses prominently. So when you look at the mind of Stephen Wiltshire, along with his genius visual intelligence, he is also fueled by a logical mathematical intelligence. You see this in the way that he draws the number of stories in every building of the cityscapes he's drawing with precision. In my assessment, Akiane Kramarik is also fueled by existential intelligence. She's just very deep and philosophical. She questions the nature of existence. She contemplates and connects with this higher power that has been inspiring her work from the beginning. As Akiane has blossomed into a woman, the depth and beauty of her art has become utterly profound. Among the many ways that we can all become more intelligent is to take in what geniuses have put out, to recognize the people who are geniuses in the intelligence that you are inspired to cultivate and study their work. If you're linguistically intelligent and want to be a writer, study the works of genius writers. If you're visually intelligent and want to be an artist, study the work of genius, visually intelligent people. Whatever we appreciate can grow stronger within ourselves, because by appreciating it, your mind is drawn into it and you're perceiving it on subtler levels of detail. Who am I? This is a question that can elicit levels of answers. In every culture and era of human history, there is evidence of a type of self-realization that transcends the temporary identities we wear throughout our lives. So the knowledge of who you are is really quite layered. As you look within, it becomes important to acknowledge it all. Everything from the capacity for unconditional love to those very creaturely desires that are meant to be satisfied in moderation. And also to look at the looker itself, to become aware of the steady conscious presence that you always are. In the same way life is always now, you are always a conscious presence. Consciousness is where you derive a sense of self. We don't just exist, we are conscious. We know we exist, and we know certain things about the nature of our existence. We know that we've come from our ancestors. We know that over time we age. We know that our time here is finite. We have a sense of the big picture of human existence. And yet you aren't only conscious of human nature in general. You are conscious of your own personal nature. Your ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills related to yourself is an intelligence. It's intrapersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal intelligence can be defined as an information processing capacity directed inward. It means being able to process the information of your internal experience, to detect what's happening in the privacy of your own consciousness and to understand it. You have your stream of mental activity, your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, your dreams, your visions, your urges, your instincts, appearing and disappearing, flowing and morphing in your mind's eye. You have your patterns, your habits, your addictions, the typical reactions you default to. You have your emotional atmosphere. You have your personality, which is essentially the recipe of characteristics that gives rise to the flavor of you. It's a whole world in there. And your outward actions, your behavior, tends to reflect that inner world. There are examples of people who may have attained a real experiential knowledge of their own spiritual essence, yet who never acknowledged or admitted their oh-so-human follies. The controversial spiritual figure Osho Rajneesh is a prime example of this. Wild Wild Country, the documentary series that tells the story of his uprising, is a must-see. I have no doubt Osho really did figure out how to release inhibitions and unleash states of ecstasy, and that he had gleaned powerful philosophical insights in his life. He expressed some beautiful wisdom, like, you are already a masterpiece. You cannot be improved. You only have to realize this. And on some level, that may be true. You may be a perfect soul already, but you're also human. And humans come with some seriously selfish and even violent tendencies. Knowing that you have within you the potential for violent, immoral, dishonorable behavior is necessary for preventing it from ever manifesting.
I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me.
The poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou spoke to this recognition of the ugly potentials of human nature even within her.
You will never be able to say of an act, a criminal act, oh, I couldn't do that. No matter how heinous the crime, if a human being did it, you have to say, I have in me all the components that are in her or in him.
If along with identifying as an immortal soul, Osho also acknowledged his humanness, he could have regulated himself better. his manipulative sexual behavior, such as when one of his followers approached him seeking guidance about how to overcome her phobia of rats, and he told her she should indulge in oral sex. His insatiable desire to accumulate material possessions, which drove him to collect 93 Rolls Royces. His sense of entitlement and superiority, all of this went completely unchecked, and it ended up hurting people. A great example, very inspiring to me, of someone who is aware of himself in an ultimate sense, but also in a very human sense, is Russell Brand.
A comedian and an author. Please welcome Russell Brand.
He contemplates his life deeply and gleans fascinating insights. He seeks the truth of who he is sincerely.
Well, in some ways it's me, isn't it? Sometimes I'm sadly a victim of my own primal desires, my own conditioning.
And he's also aware of the selfish, gluttonous, creaturely urges that reside within him and could derail his life if they go unchecked.
You're not a drug addict, are you? It doesn't make no difference to me. The money, the fame, the power, the sex, the women, none of it. I'd rather be a drug addict. If I didn't have my program, I'd be a drug addict today.
There is nothing in him that he's afraid to see, and his ability to look squarely at his human condition gives him great freedom over it.
My assumption of who I am has been challenged because I have a daily experience of consciousness that is distinct from my individual sense of myself.
As you develop intrapersonal intelligence, you gain clarity, you see your strengths and your limitations. You improve your ability to recognize your emotions, understand them, regulate them when necessary, and draw upon them as fuel for right action. You know what temptations you can resist and which temptations you'll cave into. And with that, you have a good sense of what situations best be avoided. You want to be able to draw upon a clear awareness of who you are, what you value, and what brings you joy in life. Remember that more than one of the intelligences from the multiple intelligences theory is prominent in an individual. And so these intelligences really exist in combination with each other. Intrapersonal intelligence will express differently based on which other intelligence is really prominent in the person. If you have high levels of intrapersonal intelligence and bodily intelligence, you are very embodied.
7, 6.
You'll thrive in any physical challenge that requires you to dig deep, muster motivation, stay disciplined, and keep yourself in the right mindset. For those of you with especially high levels of intrapersonal intelligence and visual intelligence, you'll soak your brush in the colors of your own inner world and create art. How can you develop intrapersonal intelligence? I imagine you might be expecting me to say that you need to find solitude, close your eyes and meditate. Those practices can be extremely helpful, but it's also just as important to engage with the world and to be in relationships. There is plenty you would never see in yourself until you have someone to mirror it back to you. Many buttons you don't even know you have until a special someone just comes and pushes them. So above all, you develop this intelligence by being mindful of who you are, by being open to whatever you discover, by seeing with objectivity what you are capable of, what your tendencies are, what feels natural to you. You are truly unique, made of universal elements, but combined into a variation life had never seen before you arrived. And here you are, a totally unique human being with layers of complexity and the intrapersonal intelligence to reflect on the question, who am I? I would love it if you left a comment below and started a little discussion around this. What have you discovered about yourself and your life? What methods have been helpful for you to develop intrapersonal intelligence? What are some of the benefits you've noticed from knowing yourself better? Thank you for being here. Things would not be the same without you.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Is a knife good or bad? Depends on who's using it, right? A knife is a neutral instrument, ready to be used as an extension of the will of the person using it. The knife is an extremely effective tool for the person with good intentions, or an extremely effective weapon for the person with bad intentions. Intelligence, like a knife, is morally neutral. It can be used for good or bad. The sharper the intelligence, the more effective it will be at whatever the person is using it for.
Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Dr. Martin Luther King was obviously an extremely intelligent man, and he was also obviously a very good man. He was morally enlightened, and he was so effective at changing the world for the better because he channeled his goodness through very refined faculties of intelligence. The writer Aldous Huxley once said, "There are these two indispensable things in life, intelligence and goodwill. Intelligence without goodwill is apt to be inhuman. Goodwill without intelligence is impotent." So goodwill without intelligence is just ineffective. Martin Luther King wouldn't have been able to organize an entire civil rights movement and mobilize thousands of people if he wasn't an extremely intelligent person. No matter how good you are, if you haven't refined your faculties, you won't be able to spread your goodness as far out into the world.
In jene Tage, da es noch schwer war, Nationalsozialist zu sein.
Intelligence without goodwill, what would that look like?
Die Führung des Reiches und Volkes forderte, hat das Volk sich in immer größerer Zahl dieser Führung angeschlossen und unterstellt.
It can be disturbing to realize that two people at such opposite ends of the moral spectrum as Dr. Martin Luther King and Hitler can be using many of the same tools to accomplish their very different goals. Let's focus in on one of the tools, which was interpersonal intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence is one of the 9 intelligences in Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. It's characterized by a sensitivity to the moods, feelings, temperaments, and motivations of other people, and an ability to build authentic relationships and cooperate within groups. An intelligence can look different on different people based on their personality. And so the extrovert with high interpersonal intelligence will be the person who is quite talkative and conversational and the kind of a social butterfly. But the introvert might not quite express it in that way. They'll be probably good conversationalists, but prefer to converse with people in a one-on-one setting or in a kind of a quieter setting. And they might be the person who's just kind of the quiet observer, but who's noticing all the social dynamics at play in any kind of social environment. Awareness of subtlety becomes highly refined. So that might manifest, for example, as being able to pick up on the super subtle facial expressions, tones of voice, all the nonverbals, what the person is saying, what they're not saying, to give you a sense of how they're really feeling. And with such a refined awareness, the person becomes naturally empathic. Their mirror neurons are just primed to reflect the emotional state of the other person because they notice so much about that emotional state. A person with a highly developed interpersonal intelligence is hard to lie to. They tend to have a good radar for when people are being dishonest with them.
Thank you.
They knew when Bill Clinton was lying about having a relationship with Monica Lewinsky.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
We all use our interpersonal intelligence to manage other people's impressions of us, to read how they're reading us, and to act in ways that give off the right impression. Whether that impression matches what is real and authentic or whether we are being insincere and just trying to manipulate them into having an impression that is not accurate.
These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
So remember that interpersonal intelligence can manifest on the microscopic level in the way that it's just between two people in the most intimate moments while they're pillow talking and one person knows exactly what to say in response to the other. And the intimacy is just ever deepening as each person makes a sincere effort to get to know the other. And then it also manifests on a macro level in the way that leaders persuade the collective mind in a population of people, for better or for worse. Hitler wrote that all propaganda must be popular and its intellectual level must be adjusted to the most limited intelligence among those it is addressed to. Hitler's awareness of how to communicate, his ability to instill a sense of empowerment into an individual or into a massive group of individuals was highly refined. Dr. Martin Luther King, same thing. Their public speaking skills were quite similar to each other. They knew how to use crescendo in their voice to get a rise out of people. They knew how to use their body language to really make a point drive home. They knew how to pause just long enough for the applause to last but not too long. They knew what people valued. They knew everything they needed to know about the people that they were impacting in order to lead them. And again, same tool, different goals. Dr. Martin Luther King was well aware of the threat posed by the smart but bad person. He wrote, "The most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason, but with no morals." With this intelligence, we understand that everybody is unique, and therefore our relationship with each individual in our lives is unique. The way in which we interact and relate to one person might work well, but that might not work well for the next person. So in the same way that you might have a secret handshake with every person in your life, you've got a secret style of relating to every person in your life. We are social creatures. This might be one of our most essential intelligences. And there's room for growth so that that sensitivity that we have in getting a read on other people can become extremely refined. And that ability we have to relate to other people in an authentic way, that too can become extremely refined. So let's sharpen this intelligence as much as we possibly can and use it for good. Leave a comment below. Let me know how interpersonal intelligence manifests for you, or maybe who you think is a great example of someone who possesses a genius level of interpersonal intelligence.
So now, Simone Biles gets her chance. "22 world medals overall.
The first woman ever to land a triple-double in competition on the floor exercise. How did it feel making history?"
It felt incredible. No female has ever done that skill before, but for me, I had trained it for a while now, so it was kind of just normal for me, but looking back at the videos, it doesn't look normal, and I know it's not normal.
Normal. In the way that you consider walking to be normal. And this is a really good example of what it looks like to acquire skills. The universal process by which humans acquire skills and integrate skills into their bodies. It can be represented with these 3 concentric circles, where the outside circle represents what is not yet possible. The middle circle represents what is possible yet challenging, doable but difficult. It's the zone of proximal development, the growth edge, just the right amount of challenging. And then the inside circle represents what is effortless, completely integrated, easy. All skills begin in the outside circle. And then as we develop in life, certain skills move toward that middle circle. And then if we continue to work on them, they move into the inside circle. Many of these skills are just the skills of daily living. And then there are certain skills which remain impossible to most people, but that some people have actually brought all the way into the inside circle. And Simone Biles is a prime example of this. Everything she does in the gym is unfathomable to most people on earth. Simone Biles is a prime example of a genius at bodily intelligence. Bodily intelligence is defined as a sensitivity to the feelings within the body and an ability to coordinate movement with precision and grace. There was a time when Steph Curry couldn't dribble a basketball, and then he learned, probably when he was like a week old, and then he developed that skill. But in the beginning, he had to pay attention to it every time he was trying. He had to apply conscious effort to it. But then as he continued developing it, it became not just possible, but easy. Now, of course, Steph Curry doesn't have to even think about dribbling a basketball. That's so completely effortless for him that when he's doing it, he doesn't have to think about it and he can pay his attention elsewhere. He can just kind of let the programming that he has instilled into his body take care of that skill while he reads the defense, listen to what Coach Kerr is saying, check the shot clock, be aware of the game situation, and calculate the best next move.
James trying to harass Curry. Curry off the dribble, layup, off the glass.
It's very easy to see bodily intelligence in decorated professional athletes. But it's also important to recognize the way that bodily intelligence manifests in everyday ordinary life, in the way that you can insert your keys into the ignition with more or less grace and efficiency, in the way that a server holds a plate of food with perfect balance, turns the corner, comes to the table, presents it beautifully, and sets it down gracefully. Anything you do with your body is an opportunity to express and develop your bodily intelligence. In the first part of the definition, again, we said a sensitivity to the feelings of the body. What we mean by that is being able to shift your awareness to specific areas of your body and feel what's happening on the inside of your body in that area. There's a special word for this. It's a specific type of perception known as interoception, defined as direct awareness of internal bodily sensation. And these can be obvious or subtle, and they can be painful or pleasurable or kind of neutral. One of the most instantaneously relatable examples here is the way that in this very moment, you can, without even looking anywhere other than where you're looking, you can shift your attention into your hands. And you can now suddenly be feeling your hands. And you might even be able to feel the pulsing of your blood in your fingertips. It's a subtle sensation. It's not that easy to detect. There are two major benefits to cultivating interoception, to improving at the sensitivity piece of bodily intelligence. One is that you stay tuned into your body and you can have a better sense of what your body needs. These sensations that we detect within the body are essentially information conveying the status of the body's functioning. And so if you can tune in to increasingly subtle inner sensation, then what's happening is that you're detecting signals. If you never detect the subtle whispers of what your body needs, then your body's gonna start telling you more loudly, and then it'll start screaming at you in the form of extreme discomfort. Maybe it's the subtle sensation of thirst or hunger or tension that needs releasing. Whatever it may be, if you can detect the signal, you can respond to it. And you have the innate instincts to know what the body needs. The other benefit of developing sensitivity to inner body sensation is that it's a really good way to get out of your own head. There are many people who can relate to the experience of basically being trapped in your mind, being unable to stop thinking so much, being unable to stop thinking about what you're thinking about. And this offers you reprieve from the incessant stream of thinking. This provides an opportunity to shift into a different mode of intelligence, bodily intelligence, and become primarily aware of inner body sensation. So when thinking turns negative, when thinking is keeping you up at night and it's generating anxiety, sometimes the most appropriate thing to do is get out of your own head and ground yourself in your body. There was once a time when Simone Biles couldn't do a cartwheel. And then she became aware that that was a possibility and she set her sights on it. And then she started developing it, and then cartwheels became possible. And then she continued to develop it, and cartwheels for Simone Biles became completely effortless. The refined mind is the mind that can pay attention to subtlety for an extended period of time. In all of the intelligences, sensitivity is a signature feature. And so if you cultivate your ability to pay attention to subtlety in any way, it'll translate to the way that you can do it in every way.
I had a dream. I got everything I wanted.
When you study the multiple intelligences theory, which of course asserts that there are at least 9 distinct intelligences that we all have to varying degrees, the question comes up, when should we be allowed to start specializing? When should we start to personalize our education and tailor it toward cultivating the types of intelligence that come most naturally to us and about which we feel most passionate? The current traditional path of education in the US really doesn't allow for this until about the 3rd year of college. But some people take a different route. And for example, 2 parents living in Los Angeles, Maggie Baird and Patrick O'Connell, they allowed their kids to start specializing very early.
Hi, my name is Billy, and I'm going to play a song that I made up with this guitar.
They really allowed their daughter and son to invest the majority of their time into the intelligence that they just love.
Play the song. No. Please. Ooh, what's that?
That was kind of how our house felt growing up. We grew up with like 3 pianos in the house. Being homeschooled, having time in the day to make all that music, it was just this like gift that I was given of sort of time and resources.
Which for Phineas O'Connell and Billie Eilish is musical intelligence.
If they know what they said would go straight to my head, what would they say instead?
Billie Eilish has become a megastar. And this is a case, which isn't true for all cases, where her mega stardom is actually reflective of her talent and artistry. And she'd be the first to tell you that she is not alone in this stardom. Phineas is a musical genius.
We added a couple other weird things. Billy laughed at something I said.
And has collaborated with Billie on every song that they've put out.
We decided to make it about our relationship and how we help each other and like deal with things together.
Billie Eilish!
At this point, Billie has won 5 Grammy Awards and many other awards. She's the youngest artist to ever win Best Album of the Year.
I never thought this would ever happen in my whole life.
You know, we just make music in a bedroom together. We still do that, and they let us do that.
And she is just getting started.
Aww, I love it.
They don't deserve you.
Musical intelligence is defined as the capacity to create and appreciate music. Music can be defined as the art of organizing sounds at varying pitch to produce a coherent composition that is melodious, harmonious, intelligible, and expressive of ideas and emotion. 20th century composer Roger Sessions said, "Music is the controlled movement of sound in time." There are often many people involved in the creation of any piece of music. You have your songwriter, your vocalist, your instrumentalist, producer, sometimes a conductor, sometimes a sound designer, and each of these individuals is expressing musical intelligence as they contribute to the creation of music. And in rare cases, you have all of that wrapped up into one person.
I created this album called In My Room, entirely in this room, in fact, mostly in this chair.
Jacob Collier is a great example of someone who is mastering their craft. And as with every intelligence, mastery always involves developing an awareness of and control over increasingly subtle detail.
One thing that I was very joyful to discover is that every single melody note works with every single bass note. So,
can you demonstrate that?
Yeah. So this is the note F.
He reaches levels of detail that are just way beyond most people's radar.
G7, G7 sharp 11. Oh, dude. And then G7 with a flat 13, right? A flat sus, A flat major.
It's a beautiful thing. One thing I think is interesting is Billie Eilish's level of stardom is reflective of her talent, but there are many people who are also extremely talented who have no level of stardom and maybe barely any recognition. So obviously there's more than just talent to becoming famous. It involves the support from many people, very strategic marketing, etc. But there's also an X factor that's just very difficult to put words on. But perhaps the best word for it is originality. We love originality. It's at the heart of creativity. And Billie Eilish is definitely a very original artist.
And I could lie, say I like it like that, like it like that.
Her music speaks to people on a super deep level. Billie Eilish is just a great example of what can happen when we allow young developing people to invest ample time and energy into honing their craft early on in their development.
Thank you, everybody.
So personalizing education early, allowing young people to stay up as late as they want as long as they're honing their craft, like Billie's parents did, might not necessarily translate to 5 Grammys by the time they're 18 years old, but it will definitely result in the person being advanced in a particular type of intelligence, which will guarantee that they're capable of contributing something valuable, and it will very positively affect their confidence. Every intelligence can be nurtured. We all have untapped potentials in each of the intelligences. And with the investment of time, energy, high quality attention, effort, we can reach very high levels at whatever intelligence you're inspired to develop. There is a vast spectrum representing how close to nature the various cultures and individuals of the world live, for how tuned in people are to the rhythms and cycles of nature. We are all in the womb of Mother Nature. We are expressions of nature. Yet we are unique animals in that we are not completely governed by our instincts. We feel distinct from the natural world. It appears that most other animals do not even have the capacity to deviate from an instinctual unity with nature. Homo sapiens are definitely capable of deviating. Many individuals and whole cultures deviate far from living in harmony with nature, and in doing so, suppress a naturalist intelligence. Of the 9 intelligences in the multiple intelligences theory, naturalist intelligence may be the most primal. Now, primal doesn't mean unsophisticated. It just means that it has been part of us since our earliest stages of evolution. Howard Gardner defines naturalist intelligence as the ability to make distinctions in the world of nature, as for example, between one plant and another or one cloud formation and another. I would humbly critique this definition as being focused on a form of naturalist intelligence that is combining with logical intelligence, thinking analytically and categorically about nature, which is valuable. But naturalist intelligence in itself might be better described as a sensitive awareness to nature, which gives rise to an intuition about how nature works. In nature, we see systems within systems. We see complexity appearing as simplicity. We see interplays of opposites. We see balance. We see birth, growth, decay, death, and we see the decomposition of death as crucial for the composition of new life. Everything is completely connected. Generally, people with a high level of this intelligence are capable of understanding how nature works to a significant level of detail, and they tend to have a natural instinct for keeping life alive. As with every intelligence, this one has many expressions. People may be drawn to the physical sciences, especially when they have significant logical intelligence also fueling them. They can often build and create with the natural elements very skillfully, especially if they have spatial intelligence also fueling them. Some become survivalists and demonstrate unbelievable savvy and adaptiveness in the wild.
Voila, fire.
You probably have this intelligence at a high level, especially if you feel a need to live in places that have natural, beautiful surroundings. If you cannot let too much time go by without deep explorations and connections with nature. You experience deep fulfillment from nurturing. And you seem to love animals more than most people do. You get it. If we ruin nature, we ruin everything. There are cultures of the world who have never deviated from living in harmony with nature. And then there are cultures who have strayed far. Perhaps to some degree, straying from living in perfect harmony with nature was an inevitable stage of our evolution. Perhaps this has been like a teenage stage of a collective evolution in which we've thought of ourselves as invincible, where we have been establishing our identity as distinct from wild nature, self-centered enough to believe that natural resources are ours only. The naturalist intelligence in you is the source of your sense of how we can do better at abiding by the laws of nature. I mean, the conversation doesn't even need to be about climate change. We can all agree that huge heaps of garbage are gross and unnecessary. We will degrade our own quality of life if we throw off the balance of ecosystems. I think the fact that there is any pushback whatsoever on this from government and private sector is disturbing on the deepest levels to the naturalistically intelligent people of the world. Now, I am in no position to preach. I roll a full garbage bin out every week. If everyone lived like I live, there would be too much waste in the world, and that's on me. What can I say? I'm an American, which is not an excuse, but it is an explanation for my behavior. I'm trying, but I can do better. One must draw upon naturalist intelligence and great strength to be a non-conformist in the face of consumerism conditioning. And people do. One woman, known as Julia Butterfly Hill, lived in a 1,500-year-old California redwood tree for 738 days in protest of excessive logging. Now, there is a percentage of people who will hear that snippet of her biography and dismiss her as a tree hugger. Don't be dismissive. Stereotypes are lazy. Her story is powerful. As a teenager, she was, as she put it, obsessed with my career, success, and material things. At the age of 22, she was in a near-fatal car accident that ultimately transformed her worldview and her value system.
In the night of the worst storm last winter when I almost died, I grabbed onto the tree and I said, Luna, please help me. And I learned the lesson of the trees in a storm, that they let the wind blow them. That's the way to make it through the storms of life.
Nature played a key role in healing from that trauma. She recalls falling to her knees and crying the first time she ever entered a redwood forest. Her naturalist intelligence awoke. She grew concerned with the logging practices in a forest of Humboldt County. Her community was damaged by a massive mudslide that was caused by the removal of all the trees in a large patch of forest. To be so affected by this and to see so clearly the unsustainable nature of endless growth by way of the exploitation of finite resources comes from this intelligence. During her 2 years in that tree, she never came down. She had friends bring her nourishment and remove her waste, which was about as minimal as humanly possible. It made an impact, and the logging company never cut down that tree, but they admit that they would have if not for Julia. The legendary comedian George Carlin made a really good point. He said that we are not trying to save the planet. That's not the mission. The planet is fine.
Planet has been through a lot worse than us for a long time. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, bombardments for hundreds of thousands of years by comets and asteroids and meteors, sandstorms, erosion of all kinds, cosmic radiation, worldwide fires, worldwide floods, recurring ice ages. And we think some aluminum cans and some plastic bags are going to make a difference? Planet isn't going anywhere. We are. We're going away. We're going away.
The planet will shake us off like a bad case of fleas. What we're really trying to save is our opportunity to live on this planet. And of course, live on this planet is redundant. We're trying to save our own opportunity to continue living as a species. Now, the nuance that I'm sure George Carlin recognized but doesn't lend itself to stand-up comedy is that we are interconnected with so many other species and ecosystems. And so if we're irresponsible environmentally, it will lead to the extinction of entire species. And we may be totally accountable for that. We are at a point in time where greed is an existential threat. Like, we could go extinct if we don't uproot the sources of greed. I see this as a developmental advancement that we need to make. So to everyone who is environmentally mindful, thank you, you inspire me. And to those of us who can do so much better, let's tap in to this naturalist intelligence. Let's connect with nature. In 1940, a 35-year-old Jewish man living in Austria obtained a visa to come to the US. And despite the fact that the Nazi invasion of Austria was underway, he chose not to use it. This man was Viktor Frankl. 2 years after that, him, his pregnant wife, and his parents were captured by the Nazis and sent away to the death camps. Viktor was separated from his family, and he spent the next 3 years in hell. His experience was one of being stripped down to his bare naked existence and suffering to the most extreme degrees, where every day he woke up and only one of two things could possibly happen. Either he would be enslaved under torturous conditions or murdered. So because of these unthinkably horrific conditions, along with the fact that there was no end in sight, many people just committed suicide. They couldn't take it. And Viktor Frankl, already a psychologist at that point, and a brilliant one at that, was observing his experience with that frame of mind of what is the nature of existence even under conditions like this? Where do human beings find motivation even when they are stuck in hell? And he came to the conclusion that the people who lived through that, who endured that pain without ending their own life, did so because they had something that made their life worth living, despite the conditions that they were living in. He borrowed the quote a lot, which was uttered first by Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, "Who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And this was what Viktor Frankl came to see firsthand. The why for Frankl was the hope to reunite with his wife Tilly. Sadly, he didn't know that she had already died. But this was the main source of meaning that made the hell of camp life bearable. Viktor Frankl is a perfect example of existential intelligence. Existential intelligence was not actually included in the initial proposal of the theory of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner left it out, but soon after that, after some critique and some second thought, Gardner added this to the theory. So now existential intelligence is one of the 9 intelligences in the multiple intelligences theory. And it's characterized by a sensitivity to the truths about existence. People who have a high level of existential intelligence are concerned with ultimate life issues. They are drawn to profound questions. They tend to be philosophical. They love wisdom. They yearn to understand the nature of human existence and the nature of reality. Existential intelligence has been valued in every culture throughout human history, and sometimes it takes the form of religion. And there's also secular versions of existential intelligence, the existential intelligence that a scientist might have. For example, one of my favorite Albert Einstein quotes is when he said, "The scientist's religious feeling takes the form of a rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and doing of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection." We all have all 9 intelligences to varying degrees, and so we can all appreciate deep questions. Questions where the answer is not readily available. Questions that inspire contemplation and a lifetime of observation. What is death in a world of energy that cannot be created or destroyed? And of course, what happens after a human being dies? Is there a soul? And what do we mean by a soul? Why are we conscious, and how is our consciousness brought about? And not only does God exist, but what do we mean with the word God? What is the meaning of meaning? And of course, is there inherent meaning in life? And if so, how can we discover it? And if not, can we create meaning in life? Is what we are experiencing the base reality? In the same way that the dreamer is the reality of a dream, is there a reality that substantiates the reality that we perceive? And do we perceive reality clearly? Is there a reality independent of a perceiver's perception of it, or is perception reality? And if there is a reality independent of the perceiver's perception of it, how can we begin to perceive reality more accurately? And to what degree can human beings perceive reality objectively?
I'm so confused.
These are the thoughts of the existentially intelligent person. They're capable of feeling that magnitude of life, how profoundly vast and enormous and ancient and infinite life really is. And here we are, human beings going about our lives with so much unknown surrounding us. After his camp was liberated in 1945, Viktor Frankl went on to live for 52 more years and became a legendary psychologist. And he shared his insight about his questions about the meaning of life. And he came to the conclusion that life is meaningful. And if there is any meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in life under all circumstances.
We are out to help our patients to rediscover the meaning in life.
He made 3 main arguments for why human life is meaningful. Number 1, we die. The fact that our lives are finite makes them more meaningful. If our lives were not finite, if we did live forever, then our time wouldn't matter that much because we would always have more of it. But the fact that our time here is finite makes that time precious. It makes it meaningful. Another argument for why life is meaningful is time runs in one direction. There are no do-overs. If you imagine an existence where you could do it over, where you could lie your head on your pillow at night and think to yourself, you know what, let me try that day again. I didn't speak as sweetly as I meant to, so let me just do that over. If that were possible, then yeah, your moments would not be all that meaningful because you would always have the chance to do it over, but that's not how life is. We don't get do-overs, and therefore what's happening now and what we choose to do now matters very much. It has tremendous meaning because we can't do it again, and whatever we do becomes a link in the infinite chain of cause and effect. And the third argument for why your life is meaningful is the fact that every human being is completely unique. The combination of every individual's nature and experiences has rendered them a truly once-ever phenomenon, and therefore has made them capable of doing things in the world and loving people in the world in a way with a quality that cannot be replicated. You are truly irreplaceable, and to the degree that you feel your irreplaceability, your life will feel meaningful. No one can love who you love in the way that you love them. No one can do what you can do in exactly the way that you can do it. So for those three reasons, life is meaningful.
The unheard cry for meaning, to find and fulfill a meaning in his life, or for that matter, in each single life situation confronting him. And if there is a meaning to fulfill, if he's aware, if he becomes cognizant of such a meaning, then he's ready to suffer, he's ready to offer sacrifices, he's ready to undergo tension, stress, and so forth, without any harm being done to his health.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the 2020 People's Presidential Choice Ceremony, where undecided voters reveal their Election Day leanings. Up first, we have a young but seasoned voter by the name of Nick Fortino. With 3 elections already under his belt, this kid knows his way around the voting booth. With an unblemished tax record, no criminal history, his decision will be eagerly awaited.
Thank you for being here. I've thought long and hard about who deserves my vote for president, and I'm about to reveal that decision.
This seemingly simple hat decision may decide the fate of a nation. Just when you think you've seen it all before, it looks as if Fortino has cleared the table entirely. The crowd is in an absolute frenzy. I'm not quite sure what to make of this. It seems as if Fortino is removing an article of clothing. Let's get down to the floor and get an explanation for this.
First, I need to vent, because I think we missed out on the candidate who had the particular combination of intelligences and qualities to lead us as our president, and that was Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is a logical genius, and we need a logical genius as our president during this time. And what I find to be ironic is the fact that logical intelligence is the most celebrated intelligence of all 9 in the multiple intelligences theory, and yet we have a leader who is really underdeveloped in his logical intelligence.
I don't think they like me very much.
Logical intelligence is the ability to think critically, to develop an argument that is based on valid key points that do not contradict each other and that really do lead to that conclusion. We see the essence of logic, which is its systematic nature, in mathematics, in engineering, in computer science, in the use of the scientific method, right? The way we ask a question or state a hypothesis and then design a study method particularly capable of answering that question or testing that hypothesis, and then collecting some form of valid data in a careful way, and then analyzing those data, and then drawing conclusions that are strictly based on the data and totally detached from our emotional bias about how we want the study to go, and then presenting those results to the public with objectivity. That is one big logical process. This is why science preserves truth. In the study of logic, there is what we call logical fallacies. And two of the most common logical fallacies are the ad hominem, which is when you attack the character of the person instead of the content of their argument.
But President Trump says Russian interference is a hoax.
He's an idiot in terms of saying that. Everybody knows this.
And the straw man fallacy, which is when you misrepresent someone's argument and then try to counter your misrepresentation of their argument instead of directly countering their argument.
We're having a lot of problems with Democrats. They don't want to vote for anything. They don't care about lack of security. They really would like to have open borders where anybody in the world can just flow in, including from the Middle East. From anybody, anywhere, they can just flow into.
The golden rule of debate and of any kind of argument should be that each person understands the other. But presidential debates have just gotten so far from that.
Because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States.
Logical intelligence is what we use to solve problems. It's well known in psychology that the ability to problem center is a mark of maturity. To really focus on exactly what the problem is enables us to find solutions, and very efficiently. And in my assessment, Andrew Yang really did propose the best solutions to our problems.
I'm not a politician, I'm a problem solver. I spent the last number of years helping to create thousands of American jobs.
Do you all remember the first time you heard about me in the campaign? How there's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month? Where the first time you heard it, you were like, ha ha, that's a gimmick, that'll never happen. But if you dig into it, you will find this is not an Andrew Yang idea. This is a Thomas Paine idea. This is a Martin Luther King idea. This is an Elon Musk idea.
The proposal to implement a freedom dividend, where every American adult gets $1,000 a month if they want to opt into that program, is logically sound. Andrew Yang thought through this thoroughly, as evidenced by the many long-form conversations he had and by the book he wrote, in which he explains why this is necessary because of the present problems and because of the problems that we can foresee in our near future. Problems including the fact that artificial intelligence is supplanting people for many different jobs.
One thing I'm saying to people is like, look, it's not immigrants that are taking these jobs away. It is the fact that technology is pushing our economy in a direction that makes it harder and harder for many Americans to get by based upon this current I trade my time for money model.
That there are many people who are doing some of the most valuable work in our country, for example, raising children, that the capitalist market that we have values at zero. They get no money, even considering what we understand well in psychology, that if you meet people's basic needs, it's not that their motivation is dampened by that. Rather, their motivation shifts to higher level needs, which will ultimately result in a more well-rounded, highly educated person who contributes more to society. But when people are forced to have to meet survival-based needs on a daily basis, who have no sense of security around their future, they don't give back much because they are having to focus on survival. And it's just sickening that people who have no idea what it's like to be in poverty are making the decisions that keep people in poverty. Andrew Yang, he gets it.
It's difficult to do if you have companies like Amazon, trillion-dollar tech companies, paying literally zero in taxes while they're closing 30% of our stores.
Now, we need to put the American people in position to benefit from all these innovations in other parts of the economy.
So his reasoning for why we need this is sound. The premises that have led to that conclusion are valid. And his logic for how we can pay for it is sound.
If we had a value-added tax at even half the European level, it would generate over $800 billion in new revenue, which combined with the money in our hands, it would be the trickle-up economy from our people, families, and communities up. We would spend the money and it would circulate through our regional economies and neighborhoods.
And here's the kicker for me, thinking about it psychologically. The degree to which the wealthy people, whose wealth would basically just be growing at a slightly slower rate, the degree to which they would feel that difference is extremely insignificant compared to the degree to which people in poverty would feel the difference of $1,000 a month. Whether they're in poverty or middle-class folk who get $1,000 a month, this would be dramatically life-altering. It would free them to be able to focus on higher level needs, to be able to invest into themselves. These differences are dramatic in the common person's life. So it's a very sound argument leading to his conclusion that this would help solve what Martin Luther King described as one of the three main evils in society, along with racism and war. It's poverty. And this is the most direct solution to poverty. And it's based on totally sound arguments. Now more than ever, we need a president who is non-divisive, who is articulate, diplomatic, systematic, calculated, who is peaking cognitively, who is a logical genius. And in my humble assessment, neither of our two main choices meet all of those qualifications. And I think many people share my feeling of like, really? Is this really who we're choosing between? These two in particular, who are both showing signs of cognitive decline.
Come on, man. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh?
Who both seem to be incapable of holding a long-form, complex, logical conversation that directly addresses our problems.
You know, there are those that say, you can test too much. You do know that.
Who says that?
Oh, just read the manuals, read the books.
Manuals?
Read the
What
books.
manuals?
Read the books.
What books?
What testing does.
Who, no,
is
sorry.
it just, wait a minute, John, let me-
Currently, recording this video a couple months before the election, Biden has the edge for me. And his decision to run aside Kamala Harris gives him an even bigger edge. But I'll be very reluctant to vote for him. He was one of my last choices of all the Democratic candidates. And if I vote for Biden and you don't, let's not let that disconnect us. Let's stay connected. Let's stay in conversation. Let's continue understanding each other. Let's overcome the great downfall of humanity, which is the us versus them mentality, which our political atmosphere totally exacerbates. Let's drop these pretty ridiculous ideas of like the blue team and the red team. If we are divided, we will definitely be conquered by whoever wants to have power over us. But if we are united, we'll prosper. Let's be logical.
Well, there you have it, folks. Looks like a classic case of being forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. Nick will be casting his vote begrudgingly this year, but never fear. Rumor has it that Nick and fellow logical intelligence advocates Dave Chappelle and Elon Musk are already working on the Yang 2024 campaign.
Thank you for your support. For me and for Yang. Yes, indeed. All right, we'll take it.